Well, our big focus today, India's Chandrayaan-3 is all set to create history. Today, the nation will go through one of the most agonizing 20 minutes when the Vikram lander goes in to attempt a soft landing on the moon's surface this evening. It all comes down to the final 20 minutes when the lander carries out a critical technical maneuver, transferring its high-speed horizontal position to a vertical one in order to facilitate a gentle descent onto the surface. If the mission is successfully completed, India will become the fourth country to master the technology of soft landing on the lunar surface after the United States, China, and the erstwhile Soviet Union. India will also become the first country to reach the unexplored largest south pole of the moon. The live telecast, by the way, of the event will be available from 5:27 p.m. this evening.
Here we have a majestic liftoff of LTM-3 M4 rocket carrying India's prestigious Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft.
India's celestial 20 minutes of terror. India will go through a nail-biting 20 minutes of terror or a T20 finish.
Liftoff normal, P1 tracking.
After a majestic liftoff, ISRO's Bahubali rocket put Chandrayaan-3 in the Earth's orbit.
200 stages are separated.
Chandrayaan-3 took many rounds of the Earth, gaining velocity. On August 1st, 2023, Chandrayaan was nudged towards the moon on its 3.84 lakh kilometer lonely journey. On August 5th, 2023, the Chandrayaan satellite gently entered into the moon's orbit and settled in its embrace. In a crucial maneuver, the propulsion module and the Vikram lander with the Pragyan rover separated on August 17, 2023, when the satellite was in a 153 km by 163 km orbit. Soon, the Vikram lander is brought closer to the moon's surface in an elliptical orbit before the powered descent can begin. On the day of the landing, the 20 minutes of terror or the T20 kick in for a nail-biting finish. In the powered descent, the Vikram starts hurtling down towards the moon's surface at a velocity of 1.68 kilometers per second, which is nearly 6,048 kilometers per hour, almost 10 times the velocity of an airplane. Vikram is now slowing down with all four engines firing, but the lander is still almost horizontal to the surface of the moon. It then touches down on the lunar surface with just two engines firing, and the legs have been designed to take a maximum impact of 3 meters per second or about 10.8 kilometers per hour. Once the sensors on the legs feel the surface, the engines are shut down and the 20 minutes of terror are over. India's flag reaches the moon surface. Subsequently, the ramp opens up, the Pragyan rover is rolled down. Once the Pragyan rover reaches the lunar surface, the rover is then free to move around the moon. The big moment arrives when the Vikram lander takes images of the rover and the Pragyan rover takes images of the lander. The first selfies by India from the lunar surface are then beamed back to India. Now, the real science can begin. The Vikram lander and the rover are both solar powered and are made to last one lunar day, which translates to 14 Earth days. In New Delhi, Pallav Bagla for NDTV.
Our lunar mission, Chandrayaan-3, holds immense potential for gathering critical data and will significantly contribute to the understanding of the moon. Listen in to former ISRO chief K. Sivan and what he had to say, followed by a reaction from a former top NASA official.
This time it's a very anxious moment. Everybody is working, looking it very anxiously for this event to happen. And I am sure that this time it will be a grand success.
And this mission will gather invaluable data to help drive our understanding of the moon, our ability to utilize resources, and ultimately where we're going to establish settlements on the moon. So this is a vital part of that process. And by the way, whether the mission succeeds or landing or not, the mission itself, in my opinion, is an overall success.
By the way, fun fact, 1,000 engineers are behind India's Chandrayaan-3 700 crore rupee mission. Let's go across to my colleague Vishnu Shom for further details.
So I think it's interesting to talk about Team Chandrayaan, what exactly and who exactly they are. How have they been working through this COVID period? There were mistakes made during Chandrayaan-2. It didn't work out the way we wanted to. They needed to fix things. Now, when if it's broke, fix it. That's what they've done. They fixed it and they believe they've got a working solution. The people who are doing this are some of India's finest men and women. ISRO has excellent scientists and engineers who've made their way up through some of the highest and most difficult science in astrophysics, in engineering, in avionics, in aviation, in rocketry, and many other fields, including basic research as well. So we've just shortlisted a few of them. Now it is a team effort, there are many others, but here's who we've shortlisted. S. Somnath, chairman of ISRO. He is a key person. He's a rocket man. He's somebody who's worked very closely with the rocket, the Mark III rocket, which actually took the Chandrayaan mission to space. He is an aerospace engineer by training. As I mentioned, he helped design the launch vehicle Mark III rocket, and he's fluent in Sanskrit, and he's participated or been a part, acted in the film Yanam as well. Next up, Dr. Unnikrishnan Nair is the director of the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. He heads India's premier rocket research facility. He is presently heading efforts to send an astronaut to space. And Pallav, he likes to write stories. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Nothing wrong. He will write a new history for India when an astronaut goes up.
Next up, Veeramuthuvel P. He's the project director of Chandrayaan-3. So the project director very much facing the heat, I suppose, in a sense. I mean, they'll deny it.
He's the person who's contributed day in, day out for last 4 years on the mission.
Responsible for every aspect of the Chandrayaan-3 mission, rectified mistakes made on the Vikram lander that crashed onto the surface of the moon in 2019. Kalpana K, Deputy Project Director, Chandrayaan-3. She's an engineer who motivated the Chandrayaan team to keep working through this entire COVID period. They had work to do. They needed to fix their engineering and science, make sure it goes right. She is a satellite expert. M. Vanitha, Deputy Director of the U.R. Rao Satellite Center. She's an electronic systems engineer and was India's first woman to lead a lunar mission. And she likes to garden, right? Why not?
Lovely.
Some like to write, others like to garden. And the chairperson of ISRO, fluent in Sanskrit, keeps up with the language. He's had a stint as an actor as well. M. Sankaran, the director of the U.R. Rao Satellite Center, he's called the man of power at
He's
at
the
ISRO.
powerhouse of
Powerhouse of ISRO. He's an expert in power systems and solar arrays. Why is that important? Because Chandrayaan relies on the sun for energy. So designing solar arrays which are effective, which generate the appropriate power, which are reliable, right, and which can withstand the pressures of a moon mission or even any space mission, that is what his job was. He was told, make sure that these systems are powered up when they need to be powered up. And therefore, part of that was ensuring that all temperature conditions were looked at. Chandrayaan needs to work in hot temperatures and extremely cold temperatures as well. Next up, Dr. V. Narayanan, Director of the Liquid Propulsion Systems Center, a specialist in liquid propulsion systems. He is also someone absolutely key as far as tomorrow is concerned, because that 20 minutes of terror that we sort of talk about, he developed the thrusters that Vikram will use during its landing. That's the final phase. The speed has to come down dramatically as it makes its descent, and the thrusters which he has worked on have to work efficiently all together. You don't want an asymmetric thrust situation, and then you get that soft landing. B.N. Ramakrishna, Director, he is very much the communicator, and that's what ISTRAC, that's the ISRO Telemetry Tracking and Command Network, is doing right now. They are tracking it, they are tracking the telemetry, they are collecting the data, they establish the connection between Chandrayaan-3 and Chandrayaan-2. What do you mean? I'll come to that in a moment, but they did, and that is how we are going to be getting all that information that we want. So responsible for all communication between the Vikram lander and mission control, tracks all telemetry during this mission.
This morning, my colleague Pratibha Raman spoke with Dr. Surendra Pal, former advisor to ISRO. Listen in to what he had to tell us.
India is inching closer to making history with this scientific mission, Chandrayaan-3, and I'm here with distinguished scientist as well as former senior advisor, Dr. Surendra Pal, who has been looking closely at this particular mission and talking about the success of Chandrayaan-3. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us. How capable is Vikram lander when it comes to handling rough landing?
Well, presently the plan is to 1.86 meters per second to 2 meters. So it can safely land at that time, and when it touches, the touch sensor will give the signal and thrusters will stop. But the total system has been designed up to 3 meters per second. It's like that throwing somebody from a 10-story to 15-story building. That sort of impact will be there. But the legs have taken care. The touch sensor has taken care. They're up to 3 meters per second. That's quite high. It will withstand. Not only this, suppose there is a slope, because the south pole is boulders, craters. There is a slope up to 10 degree. There also it will be stable and it will remain there. So it has got capability to land that sort of thing, so which is called rough landing.
Also, India, there is so much of excitement all around, mainly because one, India is looking at becoming one of the first countries to explore the South Pole, and two, it is also the fourth country in line to explore or master the technology of rough landing or soft landing on the moon's surface. So what are your thoughts on this? How excited or nervous are you?
Well, I'm quite excited because I was involved in ISRO for almost 42 years, and I was involved in Chandrayaan-1. The communication systems which are going here has got the same legacy and heritage. So I'm quite excited, and I'm quite confident also. See, there are three things. I'm excited being an Indian. I'm quite confident and anxious, little bit of anxiety being a space technologist, but God willing, I have to believe in the God. We will land.
There lies the answer. There is excitement and at the same time everybody is so very anxious and all eyes are on the clock. The clock is ticking. 6:04 today. We will know where we are standing when it comes to Chandrayaan-3.
Well, the clock is ticking indeed. We'll keep tracking all the latest developments for you here on NDTV 24/7. For now, we're sipping into a very short break. Welcome back. Highlighting the economic reforms and the technological leap undertaken by India, Prime Minister Modi yesterday said that India will emerge as the growth engine of the world in the coming years. Speaking at BRICS Business Forum in South Africa, the Prime Minister further said that the people of India have resolved to turn India into a developed nation by the year 2047. As we've been reporting, this is the first in-person summit of the BRICS, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa since 2019, though Putin is attending via video. An expansion of the BRICS bloc is under consideration at this summit, but the first engagement for the day was the BRICS Business Forum meet. Listen in to what our Prime Minister had to say, followed by the South African President.
वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था में उथल-पुथल के बावजूद भारत आज विश्व की फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग मेजर इकोनॉमी है। जल्द ही भारत $5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी बन जाएगा। इस बात में कोई संदेह नहीं कि आने वाले वर्षों में भारत विश्व का ग्रोथ इंजन होगा। आईटी, टेलीकॉम, फिनटेक, एआई और सेमीकंडक्टर्स जैसे क्षेत्रों में हम मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड के विजन को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। फ्रेंड्स, मैं आप सभी को भारत की विकास यात्रा में शामिल होने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं। हम एक दूसरे की ताकतों को जोड़कर पूरे विश्व, खासतौर पर ग्लोबल साउथ के कल्याण में महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे सकते हैं।
The new wave of protectionism and subsequent impact of unilateral measures that are incompatible with WTO rules undermine the global economic growth and development. BRICS economies have emerged as powerful engines of global growth. The theme for this 15th BRICS summit is BRICS and Africa, the partnership for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping came face-to-face in Johannesburg in South Africa on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. Both the leaders joined other BRICS heads of states for a group photograph, but it was unclear whether the Prime Minister and Xi Jinping interacted on this occasion. Well, in other news, US President Joe Biden will touch down in New Delhi in September. He will be in New Delhi from the 7th of September till the 10th of September to attend the G20 summit and also participate in bilateral meetings with a range of leaders. The White House has confirmed that the agenda for Biden will be to strongly push for the reform of multilateral development banks with a proposal that enhances the financial capability of these institutions to address challenges of poverty elimination, boosting prosperity, and addressing the climate crisis. The US President and our Prime Minister are expected to have bilateral talks, but both sides are still working out the details of this bilateral engagement. Meanwhile, in New Delhi, all government, municipal corporation and private offices and schools will remain shut from the 8th of September till the 10th of September. In view of this G20 Leaders Summit, this is what Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has said, adding that banks, financial institutions and shops will also remain closed on these 3 days. Welcome back. India's Chandrayaan-3 will attempt to land on the moon's south pole today. And India's Chandrayaan-3 satellite went through a battery of tests. The Vikram lander has been made more robust and the software has been designed with the philosophy, that everything will fail, but yet the Vikram lander can soft land on the lunar surface. Pallav Bagla spoke to Professor Radhakant Padhi, aerospace scientist at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, who evaluated what went wrong with Chandrayaan-2 and helped ISRO correct those mistakes this time around.
India is undertaking a robust mission to the moon, Chandrayaan-3. So far, Chandrayaan-3 has gone off very well. Not many people know that alongside the Indian Space Research Organization, there are many other institutions which have contributed. Among them is the Aerospace Engineering Department of the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. I have with me Professor Radhakant Padhi. He is a professor at the Aerospace Engineering Department and somebody who has been involved both with Chandrayaan-2 and also with Chandrayaan-3. Dr. Padi, thanks a lot for speaking to it. Namaskar. Dr. Padi, Chandrayaan-3, you have been involved in the project in a very big way. How happy are you with the hardware and software of Chandrayaan-3?
Oh, Chandrayaan-3 is very good. I mean, there are a lot of improvements have been done from Chandrayaan-2 to Chandrayaan-3. Personally, I am very, very happy. So there is absolutely no doubt that it is going to land safely. And almost I can say with confidence that it will also land at the primary designated landing site. So that is the confidence that we all have. And thanks to ISRO for carrying out all the necessary activities over the last 3-4 years. And don't forget that it was also a pandemic time. So despite all the difficulties, ISRO heads up to them. Lot of dedicated scientists have put a lot of good effort. And we are always there anyway, but then most of the credit goes to them.
Certainly. The Indian Space Research Organization is the lead. Academic institutions like the Indian Institute of Science have contributed. I believe lots of changes have taken place between Chandrayaan-3 and Chandrayaan-2. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And how does it make Chandrayaan-3, especially the Vikram lander, more robust?
Very nice that you asked that. First thing to understand this, we should understand what happened in Chandrayaan-2. Well, lot of talks have been there in open domain now. A lot of people know about it. But to just summarize, Chandrayaan-2 was actually a kind of a very critical mission in some sense, in the sense that a lot of margins were not available. So a lot of soul searching has been done after that, and then there are a lot of improvements have been carried out. One reason that went bad in Chandrayaan-2 mission is all because the thrust performance of the main engine was a little bit more than what is expected. And just a little bit more is not that much of a difficulty or problem, but the reason is it is actually operated for a long duration of time. When it operates in a long duration of time, then integral effect, so-called integral effect kicks in. Then eventually you are continuously braking little more for a long time, and then the speed becomes lesser. So this actually leads to a lot of other issues, basically. So essentially, the spacecraft thinks that I have to gain speed, so I have to go there, but the velocity is less and all that. So they have to now add velocity. So instead of thrust vector being like this, which is opposite to the velocity, now it has to be like this to add velocity. So that actually demands some sort of a rotation change and all sort of things, basically. So this all sort of, kind of debate went on.
So it tumbled?
It not really tumbled, because one time tumbled, into the best of my knowledge. So what happened is, suppose you have got the thrust direction like that. The reason is, remember, all these vehicles are strapped down engine. That means your head is not really turning. So if you have to really turn, then entire body has to turn that way. So essentially, when the thrust is like this and you demand like that, it was not instantaneously met. So you require some time to meet. And there was some error in that also. Some software constraints and other things were there. So it was not actually going fast enough. Okay. So when it tries to go but not fast enough, but then actually it recomputes again, then this direction is not same, it again requires like that. So initially it was like that, down like that, down like that, down like that, it depends. So essentially it went to a full cycle. So one time it tumbled too.
Now, they also say there was a failure of the algorithm. Now, what is a failure of the algorithm for a layperson?
There is a lot to in that sense. See, what I have been proposing for a very long time, including Chandrayaan-2 also, is there is something like a thrust continuity. Why this thrust continuity? Thrust means thrust magnitude and thrust direction continuity, both. Okay? And remember, thrust by mass is the acceleration. So this acceleration all in XYZ direction needs to be continuous. In other words, wherever you stop, phase 1, your phase 2 should start from there. You should not demand something very different, basically. So that was not there in the Chandrayaan-2 algorithm. So that has to be improved, and that has been improved, actually. The penalty for that is you need a little bit of more fuel. And remember, now Chandrayaan-3 doesn't need an orbiter. It has got just a propulsion module. So that has given a lot of advantages, including this one. Sure. So Chandrayaan-3 now has a little bit of fuel, extra fuel, so you can afford to do this. Chandrayaan-3 has a little bit of better legs, so you can afford to kind of go there with a little bit of extra velocity. Earlier, I think it was 2 meters per second within that. Now it is 3 meters per second. So then it's essentially you can talk about little more payload, that whatever. So all this mass advantage was actually very nicely utilized by ISRO, because we have the Chandrayaan-2 orbiter. So data communication is not a problem still, and it's not a long duration mission. It's just about a month mission. So taking advantage of that is, I think, it's a very smart move.
So do you think Chandrayaan-2, especially the Vikram lander, was an under-tested machine because simulation tests were not enough, which is why we encountered a problem and the Vikram lander crash landed well before its landing site?
Well, in a critical mission like that, we never call that is under-tested. We normally test it in a very big way. And I think ISRO scientists also did it well. But also remember, this was the first mission. So they were inspired from a lot of other successful missions and things like that. And remember, moon doesn't have atmosphere, so it doesn't give too much of surprises, wind effect and all that. So drag is still okay as long as you can predict. But when there is wind and all that, there is an unpredictability kicks in basically. So those kind of things being not there, and a lot of prior moon missions are already there. So they were a little bit overconfident, I will say that way. So they told, okay, nothing will go wrong, basically, right? Even if little bit here and there goes wrong, we are ready for that. So that was the approach. And now it is a kind of completely reverse. Now the design philosophy is, as far as I understand, it is completely, everything will go wrong. So if everything goes wrong, you better be prepared for that, basically, right? So the capturability ball we call in guidance is much, much higher now. So that means even if the error from first phase is little higher, you're still able to guide it, basically.
Meaning it was designed for success and not designed for failure, and the testing was done for success and not tested enough for failure or the off-nominal conditions. Is that correct?
Not really. The off-nominal conditions were tested, but not really for a larger ball. So remember, what we call capturability is the size of the ball. It's kind of a relay racing, or like imagine a kind of a game where you and me and other people are standing in a row. You are not really running, you are just throwing the ball. So you are ready, you are there ready to capture the ball. You capture it and throw it somewhere else, right? You will be able to capture provided my throw is more accurate, so that your little bit radius ball, it should fall actually, right? Your hands are not really very big. Okay? So now that has been made bigger. So your hands are now bigger. And also remember, because of the thrust continuity comes with attitude continuity. That means your vehicle, that this attitude to this attitude, that demand itself will not come. So even if it comes, ISRO is ready for that, but by design it is not coming, basically. So that's another remarkable improvement.
Now, there were many tests and simulations which have been done in hundreds in Chandrayaan-3. Tell me a little bit about the testing, the hot test, the cold test, the helicopter test, and the various tests using the cranes, and also different tests which have been done for the legs.
Again, this question is very well answered and better answered by ISRO scientists, but to the best of my knowledge, I will tell that. So essentially, remember, the last segment was a little bit confident mission. That means there too much of kind of ambiguity or too much of doubt was not there. So that is, this mindset was not triggered towards that, basically. And also maybe there was a little bit of hurry, that part I don't know, basically. But the test was done. It's not that it's not done, but test was not done to what is called sigma bounds, basically. So you can normally call expected deviation normally falls within plus or minus 3 sigma. So now this 3 sigma, it depends on what is the value of the sigma. Okay, so the sigma bound itself was actually not considered very large. Now here we not only designed for 3 sigma bound, it is Chandrayaan-3, it is actually designed for 6 sigma bound to some extent.
6 sigma?
Right. Sometimes it is designed for 6 sigma bounds, basically. So even if it is that much of a large deviation happens, still it is there. And the guidance tells us that it will not demand anything like a discontinuous attitude and all that. Thrust will be throughout continuous. That's a remarkable change in the guidance. Actually, that is the contribution which has come from our lab also.
Now, also, is there a possibility if everything goes wrong? Last time Vikram lander crashed, and with it crashed the dreams of over 1 billion people. This time, is there a salvage mode by which if everything is still going wrong, it will still land?
There are a couple of things. So again, first thing first is they have multiple landing sites now. So, and even if it selects site 2, not site 1, that is considered 100% success, because essentially that's also a valid site. So that is not going to be failure mode. Now, even if you are telling that landing 2 is not available and things are going wrong and your sensors figure it out and all that, on board there is a salvage guidance, as you rightly said. And the salvage guidance actually completely frees the landing site. It just talks about velocity reduction, actually altitude reduction and velocity reduction. So where it falls, well, if the God is with us, then it will fall in a proper place. If God is not with us, then it will fall on something which the spacecraft may likely to tumble, likely to stay. We don't know, basically. So this is the extra thing that has been taken into account. In fact, that has also been rigorously tested, where it will excite. So there is also a possibility of wrongly exciting, that whenever you have a salvage guide and something like that as a backup option, there is always this concern of whether the actual good mission will become bad, because it may get triggered that. So that also has been debated well, and that has been sufficient care has been taken for that. Now coming to your other question, that test mode and all that, I am so happy to see that this cold test and hot test and all sorts of things that you talk about. So cold test is typically done without engine firing. So you just take the spacecraft to a certain altitude and just drop it or something like that. And then you talk about dropping in various terrains. Like terrain is not like a helipad or something, right? Terrains are whatever terrain is there. So you can actually drop, the spacecraft can actually drop in a little bit inclined terrain. That will still be okay. And things like that. There are many tests have been done. And of course, when spacecraft goes to the final segment, that has actually been dropped from a crane also. So to take that much height and drop it. But also remember, mimicking the actual lunar condition or moon condition is certainly not possible here. Because first thing is gravity change. You can talk about 1/6 of the gravity. You do not have atmosphere there, so atmosphere effects are suddenly gone. Some people argue that, okay, why can't you just do a kind of actual mission and then land it there? Then the question is, like in aerospace theory, something called vacuum thrust and something called within atmosphere thrust. So whatever thrust you are producing within atmosphere is completely different from vacuum thrust. So vacuum, you cannot do it. I mean, vacuum conditions, you cannot do it on Earth basically. So this is the reasons why certain conditions cannot be done, certain tests cannot be done. But whatever test is possible, it has all been done.
So would you say the final, when it comes into land, about 800 meters above the surface of the moon, there will be no vertical, no horizontal velocity, and then it'll simply come down to land as on the gravity of the moon. Is that the way?
Not really. Okay, so because there is a gravity is always going to pull you down. So even though it is coming slowly, but still you have a thrust there. So thrust is going to kind of keep it balanced actually. So you release the little bit of thrust to make it slowly land. That's the whole idea there. But 800 meters is too far off. So essentially there is also something called retargeting. Retargeting means at some level when you are very close to Earth, you can actually open up some high definition cameras, and then there is a good algorithm. So remember, 3D image becomes 2D, but still you can figure it out based on the sunlight shadows. So depending on the shadows, you can figure it out and all that. And essentially what happens is, if you don't see that there is no problem there, no problem is there, you continue to land. If there is a problem, you have to kind of go there and land, and that
if you see a hazard. If you see hazard detection.
Hazard actually, if you see hazard, but even that hazard detection and hazard avoidance, you should not go at the zero height. You still do it at, let's say, a little bit height of 10 meters and things like that, and from there you go completely vertical. So it's very safe mission in that sense.
So would you say that all the known unknowns have been taken care of by the Indian Space Research Organization under Mr. S. Somanath?
Oh, I am very confident about that. So essentially, I've been a little fortunate to get involved in Chandrayaan-2 and 3, and also part of the mission review committees and things like that. So I'm very confident that everything known has been taken into account. So everything unknown, by definition, they are unknown. So we cannot talk about everything unknown. But to the best extent possible, the 6 sigma bound test has been done. And a lot of testing, hardware testing has been done. And also I forgot to mention, there are 2 onboard computers this time. Compared to Chandrayaan-2, now it has 2 onboard computers. That means even if there is some computation or data processing problem or sensor problem, the second data is still available. So there are a lot of backup options like that. So I'm very confident that the mission is going to be highly successful.
So lessons have been learnt and implemented in Chandrayaan-3 from Chandrayaan-2. It was a hard landing for India in Chandrayaan-2.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we are very happy about that. And personally, I am very happy that one of our guidance algorithm is actually implemented for software landing and soft landing for the fine braking onwards. It just so happened that we actually had intensive collaboration with ISRO, and this is actually developed jointly between ISA and ISRO. So in that sense, I think academic institutes like us has also played a huge role in this.
So you're confident that this time India would be able to soft land on a celestial body unless unknowns come into the play?
Certainly, very much, rightly said. And of course, there is hardly any chance. I can say that the chance of failure may be less than 0.1% actually. So 99.9% chance is going to be the way it is expected.
So that was Professor Radhakant Padi, very confident that Chandrayaan-3 and the Vikram lander would taste success, and that India would be able to do a successful soft landing near the south pole of the moon. India is waiting with a bated breath for the success of Chandrayaan-3 mission. Once the landing happens, the ramp opens, and the Pragyan rover comes out onto the lunar surface, and that is where, for people like me, the first magic appears. Images would be taken by the Pragyan rover of the Vikram lander, and the Vikram lander would take images of the Pragyan rover. The first selfies from the lunar surface will come if Vikram has a soft landing on the moon. This is Pallav Bagla in New Delhi.
Welcome back. Anubhav Bhosle breaks down for us the strategies and tips on how to discuss climate change with your little ones. Listen in.
Hi. I think many of you are really going to like this episode. I know, odd for me to say it, but I'm going a tad off script today and talking about parenting on the Climate Explainer. Now, given that climate change is a reality that will impact our children more than it's hitting us today, how should we all talk to our children about climate change? Now, the parental instinct obviously is to shield them from all that worry or fear. But the thing is, your child, depending on their age, is already catching wind of climate change at school, on the internet, or through friends. So it's best to get ahead and give your child age-appropriate information. So let's start. For those itty-bitty ones, that is children younger than 6, keep it super simple. Don't break out the science and bad news yet. They might not grasp terms like greenhouse gases, but they're ready to learn through wonder. So, building a love for the outdoors and a sense of care for our planet. Take them outside to explore nature, talk about the flowers, trees, birds, even insects on the footpath, and explain how we are all friends on this planet. Empathy by showing kindness to plants and animals. Explaining like how planting flowers makes bees and butterflies happy. Picture books that weave nature and magic into the storyline can also be helpful. I'll take a pause so you can all screenshot all of them that are flashing on your screens. Let's now talk about children between the ages of 6 and 12. You may think they're too young, but in 2023, this group is more than ready to learn the whys and hows of climate change. So start the conversation by asking what they know and feel about it. They might just surprise you with all their knowledge and even some of the concerns. Remember to be all ears, no dismissals. Once you've heard them out, try and clear up any myths they might have picked up along the way. Guide them towards what are reliable sources of information. For instance, Climate Kids by NASA. I'm putting up some more resources on the screen, so remember to take a screenshot. Talk to them about the basics of climate change, but keep it engaging. Break the science down to something relatable. For example, if you want to explain global warming, take the example of a cozy blanket. That's the Earth's shield. But too many blankets and things can get heated. They're definitely going to get it. For this group, as well as for all of us, the great outdoors are the best classroom. Now to the big ones, the ages of 12 to 16. Let's equip them with knowledge and inspiration. It's a great age to introduce them to shows like the BBC's Blue Planet. They are a perfect mix of wonder, awe, scale, beauty, and how the climate crisis is impacting all of us. You can also now dive into the nitty-gritty of climate science. You can talk to them about greenhouse gases and renewable energy. Encourage them to ask questions and explore solutions. Teens often know what's trending on social media, so let them teach you about the latest research and ideas. Let them shape their own opinions. Share climate change actions that you're taking together as a family, like recycling or taking cloth bags everywhere. Involve them in family decisions. For instance, should the new family car be electric or not? When the climate anxiety piles up for children of any age because of something on the news or a storm that's coming their way, it's our job to find coping strategies that work. You can try what's called emotion-focused coping, so things like a walk, a talk, spending time with loved ones, or problem-focused coping. These are actions that actually mitigate the thing that's causing the stress, and in this case, climate change. So things like composting or civic engagement, like writing a letter to your local representative. Finally, when talking about climate change, think about how you can frame the problem so that your child can continue to hope and not despair. One strategy is to develop trust that others are working on this problem, to help children realize that none of us are alone in this. Tell them about people who are working to make things better. For every climate hiccup or bad news, share a climate hero. Highlight positive stories from the news or your community, like tree planting champions. Talk about the benefits of sustainable green future, like more social justice, stronger communities, and better health. And lastly, keep reminding them to enjoy being just a kid, carefree, joyful, and finding things that are wonderful about this world. If you've liked this episode, share it with your friends. Tell us about it on any of NDTV's social platforms. I hope this was worthy of your time.